Hello everyone, welcome back to the British Content Channel. Today we are doing the Ultimate Profit Taker Guide. We have beginner builds, we have credit farming builds, we have credit speedrun builds, and then we have proper speedrun builds. So there should be timestamps on the bottom bar thingamajiggy. You can skip to whatever one you want to, I don't really mind, or you can watch the full thing to help me get ad revenue, your choice. But if you find this one useful, like, comment, sub, help me get in the algorithm, share it. Yeah, cool, let's go. Okay, so quickly before we get into it, I wanted to cover like a bunch of extras that people don't normally talk about. First of all, credit booster. If you're farming for credits, buy a credit booster, obviously. Secondly, Railjack intrinsics. They actually affect you outside of Railjack, so they're actually really important. Okay, so the first one is Tactical Rank 8, Archwing Tactical Blink, and Necromech cooldown. So the Archwing Tactical Blink is super useful for flying to Profit Taker, and it makes everything a lot quicker. So number 2, we have Piloting, Rank 8, Archwing speed increased by 20%. This is noticeable, like very noticeable, and I recommend getting this 100%. So next we have rank 5 Necromech Fury. I don't know how impactful this actually is. However, I'm going to say get it anyway, just in case. Because I don't know what not having this is like, since I've had it literally forever. So yeah. And then of course we have Command, rank 9 and rank 10 for the crewmates. So the next thing I wanted to mention is relay blessings, as most people don't actually talk about them, but they are super important. So in a relay, we have this blessing thingy, and if you're going to farm credits, getting a credit booster is a pretty big thing, but also the credit blessing, as blessings and boosters stack together, so you will get even more credits. Also, if you're planning to speedrun, using a damage blessing is super useful. It makes bad ribbons usable, as you can still one-shot, and it also increases your damage from the pistols, the Zor, and the Ogress. Now let's actually get into it. Okay, so let's start off with what is Profit Taker. So first come to Fortuna, and you need to be rank 5 with Yudico standing, which is the old mate. Once you are rank 5, there is a back room just over here, and we can enter this back room and interact with the table. Now on the table we then have Profit Taker here. We have stage 1, 2, 3, and the final fight, which is stage 4. So phase 1 is a bit of fishing and then a defense. This one's quite tough. Then we have stage 2, which is kill 3 enemies, pick up a thing, and go back to the gate. This one's the easy one, and it's the fastest to farm the gyromag systems if you need those for the first time. And then stage 3 is like a mini version of the Profit Taker fight. It's not too hard, but you will need to cover as many elements as you can. And then stage 4, this is the Profit Taker fight. The fight includes 3 stages. We have a shield phase where we need to damage elemental shields. We have a leg phase where we break all of the legs with our arch gun. And then we have a pylon phase where we destroy pylons that the Profit Taker orb shoots. We'll take a look a bit more in depth when we do a demo run, but for now that's the basic overview. Okay, we're going to start off by having a look at the gear wheel and some important stuff you need before starting. So you need the Archwing launcher to do fast Profit Taker runs. Without this, it sucks. Ancient Healer Spectres are very useful. They're not necessary, but they're quite useful. You can buy them from New Loka for 2,500 standing for 5 of them, and they're very good if you don't have Prime Sure-Footed or just struggle with survivability in general. Now we have the Squad Shield Restores. You can buy the blueprint for these from the Tenno Lab, I believe, and they're very useful for survivability, as well as proccing the Arcane Cascadia Overcharge, and this will be a key part to the Vault speedrun section. The Archgun Deployer, we need this to start phase 4, so I'll put it somewhere in the gear wheel, doesn't really matter, and I have a hotkey set to it just for demos we're going to do later. Energy pads. Energy restores are super important because obviously there's not an infinite amount of enemies and the energy orbs aren't everywhere, so it's very useful to have these during the fight. A Necromech. You don't really need the Necromech modded, it doesn't have to have a specific build. Just having a Necromech there so that we can use the Archgun on it without waiting for the cooldown is a vital part to Vault speedrunning as well as the speedrun CHROMA section. On-call crewmate, this is a very useful and very important piece of the Profit Taker puzzle. We're going to do a little section on crewmates in a second once we finish this, so we'll talk about that in a minute. And that is all there is for the gear section. Moving on to the Archwing, you want to use Itzal because it has the fastest flight speed out of all of the current Archwings. And the build, you don't need a build, you only need Hyperion thrusters. for the extra flight speed. If we can fly to the spawn faster, the run is faster, and it's as simple as that. Okay, so now let's take a look at on-call crew members, as they are really important in the fight. So to unlock them, we need intrinsics, and we need rank 9 or rank 10 on command. As you can see here, on-call crewmate and elite crewmate. I recommend getting 10 if you can, but if you're really struggling, just go for rank 9. So once we've got this intrinsic, we can head to Fortuna and purchase some crewmates. Okay, so once on Fortuna, we're going to fast travel to Ticker, and at the bottom we can hire Railjack crew members. So all these crew members have different stats, and if you have rank 10, we have different elite stats, as you can see. So the stats we're looking for are repair, combat, and endurance, and most optimally we would want 5, 5, and 5, but sometimes that's not going to be possible. Try and get 5 endurance and 5 combat, and then maybe 3 repair. This guy, for example, would be a decent start if you don't have a crewmate yet, as he would be able to get to 5 combat, 5 endurance, and I think 1 or 2 repair. If you have rank 10, the elite stat you're looking for is 150 crit chance with rifles, like this dude, or 150 crit chance with pistols, and I'll show you some examples of my crewmates a bit later. Okay, so once you purchase a crewmate, we're going to now head to the dojo dry dock. Okay, so once we've headed to a dry dock, we're going to go into configure railjack, and there's a crew section right here. Hover over the crewmates, and you should see the on-call option, just select that. This guy here is my on-call crew member, and he has the 150 crit chance with rifles perk, and as you can see, he also has 5, 5, and 5. That is the most optimal profit taker crewmate. So the weapon we're going to give him is the Synapse, and it can be bought from the infested lab thingy-majiggy. Here's what it looks like. The build we're going to be running is this. We are covering gas, cold, and corrosive. If you don't have the 150 crit chance with rifles perk, use point strike instead of hammer shot. I'm just slotting hammer shot for the extra critical damage because I don't need crit chance. Do not use an arcane adapter or a riven, as crewmates don't use rivens or adapters, so it's just a waste of slots. We cover cold, gas, and corrosive as they are the most annoying elements for us to cover. Cold and gas usually come from our primary weapons, and corrosive usually is something we cannot cover, and so the crewmate covers all of those elements for us. Okay, so now we're ready to run Profit Taker. Let's have a look at some builds. Okay, so here's our ultra budget Revenant build. Ignore my Archon Shard, that is for disruption. Instead of his 4th ability, we have Eclipse Subsumed. We are running Sprint Boost, as that affects our Archwing fly speed, and we have built everything here for mostly strength, for the damage boost, and duration to keep Eclipse active. We're going to use Mesmer Skin to keep ourselves alive, so that's not a problem. We have Arcane Tanker, in case our Mesmer Skin stacks run out while deploying the Archgun, and Arcane Velocity just boosts our fire rate on the secondary weapon. Primary weapon is Zenith. Ignore that it says Ignis Wraith, it is a Zenith. And here is the ultra budget build. We have critical delay as we get 105 crit chance on our secondary fire mode, and we are covering cold and corrosive. Make sure you slot the elements in like the correct order, as if you swap them round you end up with some very weird setup. If you wanted to slot an arcane, something like Deadhead to help with recoil, or primary merciless to help with the damage. The secondary weapon, we are using the Tenet Detron. We are using a magnetic sister. Try and get 60% if you can, but I just stopped using this weapon a long time ago, so I never bothered. Here is the build. We have Creeping Bullseye for critical chance, Hornet Strike for damage, and we are covering heat and viral. Radiation comes with this weapon without any mods. Magnetic comes from the sister, heat, and viral. Again, make sure you slot them in the right order, otherwise if you swap them around, it ends up being a bit funky. If you wanted to upgrade this build, feel free to use Primed Heated Charge, slot something like Prime Expel Corpus, or use the regular Toxin mod. For the melee weapon, we are using Azor, and here is the parts. The Link and the Grip are both for attack speed, and the Strike is Bala as it has good damage, a fast attack speed, and animation. Here is the build. We are using Exodia Contagion. It can be rank 0 or rank 3. They both do the same thing. We have our crit chance to get over 100 crits, and we are covering gas and electricity. If you wanted to upgrade this build, remember use Prime Attack Speed, or you can use the actual Heat and Toxin mods, as the status chance is completely useless in Profit Taker fights. For the Focus School, you can use pretty much anything you want. Vazarin, Protective Sling, is very useful if you feel like you're dying. Madurai has cast speed and sling strength, which are both very useful here. Yunaru has prime sure-footed if you feel like you keep being knocked over for some reason. Zenuric has Wellspring for the energy, and Naramon is useless. For the companion, you have two options. Either you can run Smita Kavat, and here's my build. We have Charm, obviously for the double credits. Rank 4 Bite gives us 50% crit chance, which allows us to use Tenacious Bond. We have Reinforced Bond for the fire rate, and the rest of this is just my generic Smita Kavat build for normal gameplay. Or, if you don't feel like farming credits, you can use Worm Prime. Here's the build I use for Worm. No, that's not the build I use for Worm. That's the build I use for Worm. We have Duplex Bond to kill enemies. We have Reinforce Bond for the fire rate. Negate to keep you alive. You don't need Prime Regen, to be honest. If you have a weapon that has crit chance, use Tenacious Bond. But yeah, I recommend Smita Kavat for this build. For the heavy weapon, we're going to be using the Morzalon, and here is the build. We're using Radiation here, with our crit chance and prime damage. We use Ammo Chain because the Archgun cooldown relies on your ammo maximum, so we increase it to decrease the cooldown. And this is the ultra budget build. But yeah, now let's take a look at how we do the Profit Taker fight. Okay, so on this loadout, we're only missing one element, and that element is Toxin. So when we see Toxin, we're going to shoot Profit Taker with our amp, and after 5 seconds, that will change the shield. If you have an on-call crew member, remember to deploy it at the fight area, and he will take care of all the random junk enemies for you, and it makes the fight a whole lot easier. So we're going to fly to the spawn. And when we get close, just use all your abilities and start damaging the shield. So Radiation is on our Detron, Impact is on the Zor, Corrosive is on our primary, Toxin we don't have, so we're going to shoot it with our amp, and then we're going to break the shield, deploy the Archgun, and break the legs. Okay, remember to recast your Mesmer Skin and kill as many enemies as you can, and break these little pylon things too. So once the pylons are down, make sure you're in semi-fire mode with the Zenith, and just shoot at the waypoints. And drop your Archgun, and break the legs again. Remember to recast Eclipse, and break the shields. Okay, so we're going to shoot semi-fire mode and get ready to break the pylons. There we go, and get ready to shoot. And there we go. It took about 2.5 minutes, but that was a terrible run from me. Since I don't use this setup very often, I kind of forgot what the elements on the weapons were. So yeah. All you want to do now, just wait till the end. I'll throw my crewmate to keep me alive here. Go into Itzal. Pull all the loot. And there we go. 125,000 credits. If you have a booster, that'll be 250k. And that's simple as that. Nice. Now let's take a look at some credit farming setups. Okay, so this is the credit farming CHROMA. This is the cheaper option, as it doesn't require like 1,000 umbral forma. But here's my build. Ignore how many forma I have here and how many umbral forma. You don't need this many, I promise. So I'm using steel charge for the extra mod capacity. I have prime sure-footed here. We're using adaptation and 2 umbral mods. We have streamline, transient fortitude, and we have eclipse instead of vex armor. So CHROMA is used because his 4th ability, Effigy, can double the credit drops. If you place it in the correct place, we're going to get 250k from Profit Taker. We're using Arcane Avenger to help with the 10 at Detron's crit chance, and Guardian is just for survivability. The primary weapon, again, is Zenith, and here is the build. It's a bit more advanced than the Revenant one. So Amalgam Serration gives us Archwing fly speed. We're running Cold and Corrosive. Deadhead can be swapped out for Merciless if you really want. I just prefer Deadhead for the negative recoil. Same as Twitch. Negative recoil and weapon spread is super nice. Pistol we have is 10 at Detron. It's a magnetic progenitor. Try and get as close to 60 as you can. And here is the build. We're running Heat. Radiation comes with the weapon. We have Magnetic from the sister. And we have Viral modded on. We can use Secondary Dexterity. Or, if you have it, Cascadia Overcharge is super useful as it gives you that guaranteed crit chance. Eject Magazine is just for reloading while we're shooting our Zenith, so that's quite useful. The melee, we are using Azor. Here are the parts. The Link and the Grip are for attack speed, and the Strike is Bala as it has good damage, good attack speed, and a fast animation. Here is the build. We're using rank 3 Exodia Contagion. It can be rank 0, doesn't really matter. We are covering electricity and gas. And out of this build, the only thing that's missing is Toxin, so we're going to change Toxin with our amp when we see it. Focus School, I'm using Vazarin just for survivability, but you can use Madurai, or if you don't have Prime Sure-Footed, you can use Yonaru and change the Exila slot to Power Drift. So the heavy weapon we're using is the Morzalon. Here is the build. This is a budget build. If you have dual rounds, feel free to slot it either on Magma Chamber or Charge Bullets, but this was designed to be a budget build, so I decided not to slot it. Yeah, and that's everything for the build, so let's get into a demo run. Okay, so once again, we're going to chill in the elevator until 8 seconds, and I'm going to drop an energy pad here, just to fill up my energy. You don't have to do that, but I always just do it. Alright, so we're going to fly over to the spawn. Shoot the Zenith Disc, cast Eclipse, and cast the Elemental Ward, and now we're just going to break the shields again. So we see Toxin, so we're going to shoot it with our amp, and it will change. There we go. And I'm going to deploy my Arch Gun. And break the legs. I'm going to use shield pads to keep me alive here. When I start taking a lot of damage, I just deploy one, or you can throw down your on-call crew member to kill all the enemies. We're now going to shoot the pylons in our semi-fire mode. And drop the Arch Gun. And get back to it. Alright, so I'm going to drop a shield pad because I am under attack. So these guys with the Fluctus that stand on the side of the map are like super strong. Make sure you kill them. And let's break the pylons. Okay, so once the pylons are broken, once again, break the shields. And drop the Arch Gun. And as you can see in the top right, I have the Charm affinity buff, which means I'm going to get double credits from this. So we go behind Profit Taker once it dies, and this back left leg, once he flops over, place it right here, and stand next to it. If you go out of range, you will not get the double credit drops. So we just wait, and 500,000. So if you don't have a Kavat buff, you'll get 250. If you have a Kavat buff, you get 500. And then once you extract, that turns into 500k or 1 million if you have a booster. So yeah, simple as that. That was a 2 minutes 30 run. Very simple, very easy. Okay, so let's take a look at the CHROMA speedrun build. It is more expensive, so be warned. We are running Eclipse over Vex Armor, and we pair that with Total Eclipse to buff our crewmate. We have Rifle Amp to buff the Kuva Ogress, which we will have a look at in a second. Prime Surefooted is mandatory here, as we can't really use Yanaru unless you want to drop Ancient Healer Spectres everywhere. We have Vigorous Swap for more damage on the Ogress and on our pistols. And then we have Triple Umbral for the strength and the survivability. We have this Molt Arcane for extra strength. This should be rank 5, but I don't have one, so ignore that. We're going to be using Void Strike, so this will actually be useful. Arcane Velocity is for our 10 at Diplos, which we'll have a look in a sec. So our primary is the Kuva Ogress. The element does not matter. The element does not matter, only the percentage matters. Try and get as close to 60 as you can, as it's actually really important on the Ogress, and it has a big impact on the damage. If you're going to go for an element, I recommend something that you're going to use in Arby's, like Toxin, Cold, or Heat, and the build is like this. Now, if you have a Riven, you want to replace Heavy Caliber. So on a Riven, you're looking for damage, multi-shot, projectile flight speed as positive stats, and pretty much any negative, as long as it's not like negative damage, multi-shot, or whatever. Negative corpus doesn't matter because we're using it against the pylons, and they don't count as a corpus enemy. Fire rate here is kind of a dead start, it doesn't really do much, but this Riven still works. So, yeah, cool. We're using Fractalized Reset to improve our reload speed in case we miss a shot. We have Magazine Warp and Tainted Mag to get 7 magazine, as the second pylon phase has 6 pylons, and we want to be able to shoot without reloading. Night Watch Napalm is super important, as the fire is what destroys the pylons, and we have Terminal Velocity so our bullets hit the ground faster. For the secondary, we're using 10 at Diplos. We have Magnetic Progenitor, and try and get 60%. I'm just lazy. Now here is a Rivenless build. You want to be running Heat and Viral with Magnetic from the sister. If you do have a Riven, you want either Toxin or Cold on the Riven, or both, and then you can replace these two. Replace it with the Riven, and then slot Lethal Torrent. Or, alternatively, if you only have one element, like this one, I have Cold, I can get rid of the Cold mod, drop the Riven in there, and then put the Toxin mod back on. And it still gives me Viral, but it gives me an increase in damage. So here's the Riven build. Damage, Cold, Toxin, with Lethal Torrent. Remember, Riven has to have either Toxin or Cold on it, or both. Okay, so the Arcane, we're using Cascadia Overcharge, as 300% crit chance is actually massive and gives you like consistent orange or red crits. I'm using Reflex Draw for the negative recoil, and that's about it. For the melee weapon, we're using Azor. Here are the parts. The Link and the Grip are for attack speed, and the Strike is the Bala because it has good attack speed, good damage, and a fast animation. Here is the build. We're using rank 3 Exodia Contagion, can be rank 0, doesn't really matter. The build focuses on a decent amount of attack speed. We're running Toxin and Radiation, as well as Primed Smite Corpus. So on this setup, we are missing quite a few elements. We are missing gas, cold, corrosive, and electricity. So gas, cold, and corrosive are going to come from our crewmates, which I talked about earlier, and the electricity is going to come from our amp. So let's talk about that. So starting off, we're using Madurai, and we're using Madurai purely for Void Strike. The amount of damage Void Strike gives allows us to pretty much one-shot the shield. Now for our operator, we're going to be using a 7x7 amp. This is not 7x7, but it's good enough. So you need the Clamora Prism, any scaffold, and either the Certus Brace or the Suo brace. The Certus brace is by far better, but I'm not going to make another amp just for this video, sorry. So the arcanes you need Eternal Onslaught for the crit chance, and you need Virtuous Surge for the electricity damage, and we'll have a look at how we apply this a bit later. So we're not using a heavy weapon this time, we're actually using the Necromech, and with the Necromech we're going to be using the Corvus. Now the Corvus is good because it's like a shotgun and it does hella damage. Do not use the Corvus Prime. It does not work, okay? Don't use it, it does not work. Okay, so here's the build. This is a Rivenless setup, but if you have a Riven, try to go for like an element with multi-shots, crit damage, damage to corpus, etc. Here's the Riven I'm using. It has multi-shot and electricity on it, and I just replaced the electric mod, and it gives me more damage because of the extra multi-shot. If you don't have a Riven, you need to fully charge the shot before you shoot at the legs, and it will still one-shot them. If you do have a Riven, you should be able to just quick shot the legs without charging at all. For the companion, you can use, again, the Smeeta Kavat if you want the charm buffs, or you can use the Worm Prime if you want the other buffs. But that's everything for CHROMA. Now let's take a look at a demo run. Okay, so I'm going to do this run nice and slow, just to try and explain things about the run a little bit better. So, when you land at the Profit Taker fight area, make sure you drop your on-call crewmates and place your Necromech. Whenever you see the electricity shield, go into the operator, cast Void Strike, and shoot with your amp. Stay in the elevator until 8 seconds, as that's how timing the runs work. So if you see the top left on the map, nothing has loaded, so the timer hasn't started. If I exit right now, the timer will start. But anyway, let's go at 8 seconds, and we're going to fly over there. So on the way, I'm going to cast Eclipse, this thingy, land, crewmate, Necromech, and start shooting. So you're going to shoot, throw the Zor. Now this is electric, so Void Strike, and shoot. And then the crewmate will deal with this shield. There we go. Shoot the legs. Go. Now, when it's time for pylons, we fly it up into the air, like so. Take out the Kuva Ogress, and where the pylon's going to land, we shoot the floor. And as you can see, the fire will destroy the pylons almost instantly. Now, initially, you might have to shoot when they land, just to get used to the spawns. But eventually, you'll be able to pre-fire where they land, and that will speed up your runs massively. So again, corrosive, this is the crewmate's job. There we go. Radiation, so we shoot Diplos, throw the Zor. Shoot the Diplos, throw the Zor. Shoot the Diplos, and then back to this. And now it's time for pylons again, so we're going to fly up into the air, and I'm going to try it quicker this time. So fly up, shoot. That's a horrible pylon, I hate that one. I hate this spawn in general, to be honest. What is that? Anyway. Okay, so shoot the Diplos, throw the Zor. Shoot the Diplos, throw the Zor, like that. And then back in the mech. Like, that was sub 2 minutes, and it was like a super slow example. The world record for this is like 59 seconds or something. So, you can definitely do way better than I do. Now, once he flops over, place your effigy, and just chill next to the effigy, and you should double your credits. There you go, 250k, and then get out of here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a couple of runs and try and get a much faster example that I can throw in without all the explaining. So there we go, 1 minute 28. It's not great, but it's definitely better than the last one. And again, as usual, when he flops over, place the effigy. Okay, so now let's take a look at the vault build, starting off with Archon shards. You don't need Archon shards, but they are personal preference. I have 2 casting speed shards and 3 strength shards. You can have 4 strength and 1 casting speed, or just 5 strength. It's personal preference, and this is what I enjoy the most. Here's my vault build. We have Eclipse on the 4. Vault Shield gives us electric element as well as double crit damage. We have speed for the melee swing and the Archwing fly speed. Sprint boost allows us to fly faster in the Archwing, reload faster, as well as throw our Exodia Contagion faster. Prime Sure-Footed is obvious, Total Eclipse is for our crewmate, and the rest of this stuff is pretty obvious. Arcane Velocity is for our Tenet Diplos fire rate. Arcane Awakening is for damage with the Diplos. Arcane Awakening actually procs from holster reload, so we're going to be using some synth mods on our Sentinel. So the primary weapon is Kuva Ogris. The element does not matter. Go for as close to 60% as you can, as that makes a big difference with the Kuva Ogris. If you're going to play arbitrations, go for something like Toxin, Cold, or Heat, depending on what strategy you want to use. Here is the Rivenless build. If you have a Riven, you're looking for damage, multi-shot, projectile flight speed with a negative, and that can be like a dual stat, so damage multi-shot, damage projectile flight speed, etc., or something like this. Fire rate is a pretty useless positive stat, but the Riven still works, so we replace heavy caliber. We have 2 magazine mods because we want 7 magazine. The second pylon phase has 6 pylons, so we want to be able to shoot without reloading. Nightwatch Napalm is important, as the fire is what destroys the pylons, and the rest of this is pretty self-explanatory. The pistol is Tenet Diplos. We have Magnetic Progenitor. Try and get 60%. I'm just lazy. And here is the Rivenless build. We're running Heat, Magnetic from the Progenitor, and Viral. Cascadia Overcharge gives us like guaranteed orange/red crits, so it's super important. If you have a Riven, you need either Cold, Toxin, or both, and that way you can remove these 2, slot your Riven, and then put Lethal Torrent in this slot for more fire rate and multi-shot. If, like this, you only have 1 element, you can put it in and then put the other elements like so. For the melee weapon, we're using Azor. Here are the parts. The Link and the Grip are for attack speed, and the Bala has good damage, good attack speed, and a fast animation. And here is the build. We're running rank 3 Exodia Contagion, can be rank 0, doesn't matter. We're running Toxin and Radiation, and we're mainly focused on attack speed. For the focus school, I'm running Madarite for the cast speed as well as the sling strength. However, if you feel you're dying a lot, you can also run Vazarin, and if you don't have Prime Sure-Footed, you can use Yanaru, although I do recommend Madarite the most. For the companion, I'm running Worm Prime here, and I'm making use of Duplex Bond with the Verglass, as the Verglass kills the enemies really quickly. I'm using Reinforced Bond, as you can see, I have a ton of shield with this thing, and we're using Synth Fiber to reload. If you have a companion weapon that gets over 50% crit chance due to like a Riven or a build, you can run Tenacious Bond instead of Prime Regen, as the worm doesn't really die, to be honest, so yeah. Okay, so for the heavy weapon, we're going to be using the Void Rig, as we don't want to wait for the animation. And there's 2 options. If you want Rivenless or cheap Rivens, you can play with the Corvus, and it should one-shot consistently with Vault's Shield. This is a Rivenless build that allows you to just tap the legs. If you do have a Riven, you can just replace one of the elements or whatever, and this works perfectly fine. Now, if you do want to invest in a Riven, or you want maximum speed, you go with the Velocitus. So the Velocitus has very expensive Rivens, and it has a build that looks like this. So on the Riven, you have to have crit chance. It must have crit chance, and then you can have any combination of crit damage, damage, electricity, heat, or damage to corpus, and you need a negative. These Rivens go for like 2.5k or 3k or whatever, so yeah, it's pretty big investment, especially if you're just a casual runner. I would recommend doing the Corvus instead. So now let's take a look at some demo Vault runs. Okay, so a pre-warning about playing Vault. He's very squishy, and most of the enemies here can just destroy you, so we're going to have to make use of the shield pads quite often here. So we're going to wait in the elevator till 8 seconds, and we're going to drop an energy pad and a shield pad. The shield pad procs Cascadia Overcharge, and the energy pad is pretty obvious. When we see 8 seconds, cast speed, and fly to the spawn. Cast Eclipse, place a shield, Necromech, and this dude, shoot, Zor, and then tap, 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 tap. There we go. So now we're going to replace a shield, get our Necromech down, and fly into the air. Where the pylons land, we're going to shoot at Kuva Ogris, like so. And the fire will destroy them instantly. Get back in your Necromech, shoot, and shoot. And now we're going to go shoot, Zor, like so. And the crewmate should clear his own shield elements. Tap, 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 tap. And once again, pylon phase. So replace your Necromech, fly up. Okay, so this one is a far one. That's a close one. Close. There and there. There we go. Oh, I missed one. Oops. Anyway. There we go. Zor. Tap, 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 tap. And there you go. So that's 1 minute 20, which is very fast considering I was doing that very slowly. And I hope that was easy to follow. But I'm going to put a fast run up in a second that I've done, like my PB, just so you guys can see what it looks like when I'm actually trying. But yeah, when the stuff drops, we're just going to cast speed, go into Idsal, and boom, all done. So the most effective strategy is having like a Vault speedrun and then a CHROMA just double the credits for you. Okay, well I hope you found the video useful. If you did, remember, like, sub, comment. Check the links in the description for a bunch of other stuff. And yeah, cool. See you in the next one.